Welcome. We're seeing some folks showing up. Thanks for being here. I see Major Mike Webb, Tanya Whittle. If you don't mind, if someone out there could let us know if our sound is okay, if you can hear me, and then Johnny, if you'd like to speak, and let them hear
Yeah.
you as well.
Yep. Um, so 1, 2, 3. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah. So anyone out there listening to this, if you can just let us know if you can hear us. Thank you, Trey. Appreciate it. All right.
Good
Awesome.
stuff.
Thank you,
Listening.
Diane. Yes, yes, fantastic. Yeah, well, we'll get going here in just a minute, folks. We'll give just a few more minutes for people to filter in, and then we'll get going. Hi, Todd. Thank you, Janet. I did email you back, Janet, and I wanted you to let me know which of the articles you were referencing because there appeared to be two that were the same. So we'll work that out. How's the weather down your way?
Mate, I'm looking out now and it's looking pretty good. We've had a few days of rain, but generally we've had a pretty good summer over here.
What's the temperature range been?
I think it is around 25 today. That's Celsius.
That's warm enough
Uh,
to do pretty much whatever you like.
yeah. Yeah. There hasn't been many days that I haven't had a dip in the ocean for the last few months. So,
No, I love it. Do you surf yourself these days?
I don't surf much, but I do get in there and body surf and and just sort of hang with the kids. It's a bit hard when you're a young boy, as you know, who's nearly turning 4. So always got to
Hmm.
be on the lookout for him. And he's got a couple of neighbours who we go down there with. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love body surfing too. So that to me, that's my
Yeah, I know you're a fan.
first
Yeah,
love in the surfing category.
yeah, yeah. It was so healing. I always feel when I'm in the ocean, I'm just in a healing bath. Um,
It's the truth. There's nothing quite like it. People
yeah,
who haven't done it or who are afraid of the ocean for one reason or another, they don't know what they're missing.
yeah, no, that's true. That's why we live by it.
That's right. That's right.
You know?
That's cool. That's really, really cool. Love the t-shirts you sent us. So
Oh, yeah, yeah, cool,
yeah,
yeah, just the
those are the best. It's been our winter, so I haven't really had a chance to
oh, good, yeah,
wear it because I want to kind of flaunt it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
such a cool t-shirt, and Lee loved hers, which is even lighter than mine. So we're waiting for the warm weather to hit in about a month to really be able to get out in those.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's your connection or mine, but you mi
It says your internet connection
yeah,
is unstable
unstable.
at the moment.
Yeah, I'll,
Was I going in and out when
maybe I'll
you were
just open
listening?
this door and, um I don't generally have much of an issue up here. Um, you can hear me good now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I want to welcome everyone who's shown up. I know other people will be joining us. Thank you. This is Saul Luckman, and you're listening to Conversations on Saul Luckman Uncensored. I am absolutely thrilled today to have with me Johnny Flynn from Australia, from Coolum Beach, Australia, and he is the author of an extraordinary book that has inspired me more than about any other book I've read in a very long time in certain ways, and maybe we can get into what I mean by that at deeper levels. But the first thing it inspired me to do, a book called The Mandela Dilemma, was to write an article about it, which I did in late December, and that's been a pretty popular article. And this is how I began the article, and this will give you some context for how we hooked up. And Johnny had said that he had a story about how he initially discovered me. But I said that earlier in this month of December, this is back in December when I was writing this, an unexpected and quite mysterious box showed up on my doorstep, postmarked from Coolum Beach, Australia. Little did I know what a deep rabbit hole awaited inside as I curiously opened it and pulled out an inexplicable pair of beautiful t shirts, one for myself and another for my partner, Lee, that turned out to be from my friend Johnny Flynn's surf shop down under. The lovely t shirts would have been Christmas present enough, but an even greater gift, inviting a veritable paradigm shift, lay at the bottom of the box just atop the aforementioned rabbit hole. A hefty, glossy, hardback copy of Johnny's new book, which I had no idea he was even writing, The Mandela Dilemma. As I hope to make abundantly clear in what follows, this text is arguably the definitive scholarly and theoretical work on a truly bizarre, largely misunderstood, and often ignorantly maligned phenomenon. Anyone who hasn't read The Mandela Dilemma and tries to take credit for debunking or otherwise discrediting the Mandela effect clearly hasn't done the research. So we will go from there. I wanted to let you know that in addition to his surfing business and his his work as a writer, Johnny has a very long and varied career in numerous roles, including actor, director, screenwriter, producer, and editor of music videos, TV shows, plays, and feature films. So he has a lot that he brings to the table, and I'm glad that you're at the table with me, Johnny. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Sol. Yeah. Look, I love that opening intro, especially your article. I was wrapped when you wrote that. I'll correct you on one thing. I don't have a surf shop, but and I still do a bit of work for a skate company. But so just in case any Coolum Beach locals are listening and thinking, "Oh, that guy doesn't own the surf shop," um, but yeah, well, I mean, that package was. Was sent on behalf of myself, obviously, and but my wife, and our 2 kids, which we, have been the recipient of your healing modalities for the last couple of years, and I didn't let you know that I was doing it, but you
Hey,
were the.
Johnny, I want to make sure we can be heard.
Yep.
Someone said that they
Oh,
lost
okay.
sound, Saul, from Janet. Can you hear me? Can people out there hear me and Johnny? We seem to be having slightly.
I'm not getting any,
I'm not getting a
no,
notification.
no, no, maybe I wasn't speaking into the microphone or
Maybe sound good,
sound
sound
good?
good. I can hear both. Okay, okay. Just
Good
just
stuff.
uh, just verifying that. So you were talking about doing regenetics.
Yeah, yeah, and, that was as in circling back to the Mandela effect when I first discovered it, because I know it's been obviously people have known about it for a long time since, 2009, but I only found out about it in 2022 when I had a 3-month-old boy and you had posted something, on the Tutankhamun Mandela effect, and incidentally, I started following you, which you probably don't even know, from a Telegram group, one of the sort of no virus Telegram groups. I can't remember which one, but I sort of noticed every time you commented that you always made sense. I was like, oh, who's that guy? So I just clicked on your thing, and then I ended up reading your book, Potentiate Your DNA, and I thought that's really cool. My wife read it. She's like, "Oh, let's do it." And then we just decided, well, why don't we just get the guy who wrote it to do the healing on us? So, we've gone through the whole process with our whole family, and it's been great. And but yeah, you were the guy that introduced me to the Mandela effect. So, and I remember that distinctly, because watching Batman and Robin growing up, there was I always remember the snake on the top of the head dress there, and there was never a vulture with it. Even Mystery Skateboards, the company I worked for had a graphic with that very snake, but with the mystery logo, and there was certainly no vulture there. So I was like, "Oh, that's interesting," because I don't remember that. And then I scrolled down the playlist of the video, and just to see, there was a couple of things that were interesting, but then I ran into the JFK one, and my my jaw just dropped, and I was like, hang on, and it took a few clicks to around the internet to really understand if what had happened, because I was like, oh, maybe this is fake, maybe this is deep fake, and all this sort of stuff. And I realised no, that there are now 6 people, and as I mentioned in the book, that I did.
So there are 6 people in the car, at the assassination?
Yeah, and I always recall 4, and you probably read in that particular chapter that about 10 years ago I'd done some really intense studying of the Zapruder film because of I'm not sure if you'd heard of it prior, but the driver shooter theory of the JFK assassination. And I remember my cousin sent me something. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. That really looks like the driver shot him." And I spent months just searching for this, and then I found a video saying it was an optical illusion, and I was just, by the end of it, I was like, "Oh, I actually don't know," But what I did know, what I really did know when I saw that Mandela effect was like, I wouldn't even have considered that as an option if I knew, Connolly was in direct line of fire. And that's what really sort of disturbed me in a sense that, for the first, I'd say, few months, if not longer, of researching it, I was always doubting myself, like, oh, maybe this, maybe that. But then they kept on kind of coming, there was some big ones that I was very kind of close to. Born in the USA album cover, the
Oh, yeah, that
Flintstones.
was amazing to read about in your book.
Yeah, that was my very first album that I ever owned, vinyl, and I hadn't seen it for years, and so all these little things, and the Flintstones, of course, with my name being Flynn and my mother's maiden name being Johnston, I was constantly going, "Oh, I'm nearly, John Flintstone," like, and so it's like these things were I was going, "No, I didn't misremember that stuff," but, I was always, and so ever since I sort of, discovered it, I was researching it for graphics for the company too. I was always discussing it with family and, bringing it up, and I was really quite surprised at the lack of, interest. Like, there was initial interest. It was always like, "Oh, that's interesting," and that they never seemed to get how profound it was if that was the case, So I sort of set out to prove, beyond reasonable doubt that sort of we are kind of living in a construct that's editable.
Yeah, I love that, and that has been one of the things that has most inspired me. And in fact, it played a role in launching me into writing a new book, which is a sequel to Get Out of Here Alive. And
Right,
I
which I
won't
read,
spill
I
the
loved
beans
it.
with my
Absolutely.
title. I appreciate that. So I won't spill the beans for people about the
Mm,
title, but I'm using the Johnny's hollow conscious universe model as a kind of framing device for the argument I make in the book. So it's been extremely useful in addition to being quite inspiring. And it helps snap together so many elements that shamans and mystics and alchemists have talked about for a very long time, having to do with the malleable nature of reality. So it's very exciting to me to be having this conversation because I've been just immersed in this way of thinking and writing this book for the last little bit. In case you're unfamiliar with it, which is possible, this is what Johnny has to say by way of introduction of the Mandela effect in his book. It is a term coined by paranormal researcher, journalist, and author Fiona Broome in 2009 when she recalled Nelson Mandela dying in a South African prison in the 1980s. Uh, History, of course, shows that Nelson Mandela died in 2013. Broome realized many others also remembered him dying earlier. She was surprised that such a large number of people could remember the same event that never actually happened. So I'll just put this out there to people listening, and you can write this in the chat if you like. Uh, I've been Mandela affected. I was Mandela affected by the name, the spelling of the word dilemma, which is a major part of Johnny's book, as you might imagine. I was Mandela affected by a number of other things, including the Bruce Springsteen Born in the USA album cover. Is it a red bandana or ball cap in his back pocket? There's so many different things. I actually have some questions that I wrote in my article. So I will leave these uh, for your consideration. So regardless of whether you tune in or not. Is it mirror, mirror on the wall or magic mirror on the wall? Does the thinker in Rodin's famous statue clench his fist to his forehead or rest his chin on a relaxed fist? Does C3PO have two gold legs or one silver one from the knee down? Is Britney Spears' miniskirt in the iconic video for her debut single Baby One More Time plaid or black? Is it the Flintstones or the Flintstones? Is the correct title The Grinch Who Stole Christmas or How the Grinch Stole Christmas? Does Mr. Monopoly wear or not wear a monocle? Does the logo for Fruit of the Loom have or not have a cornucopia? Is the famous line from Crocodile Dundee, "That's not a knife, this is a knife," or "That's not a knife, that's a knife"? Is it Interview with a Vampire or Interview with the Vampire? Is the correct spelling Looney Tunes, EY, or Looney Tune, ONS, Tunes, or Looney Tunes like Tunes, TUNES? Is Doc Holliday's famous line from Tombstone, "I'll be your Huckleberry," or "I'm your Huckleberry"? Is the correct name for the celebrated actress Sally Fields or Sally Field? So if anyone has any Mandela effects going on with any of those or other Mandela effects, and there are hundreds of these things,
Mhm.
please feel free to share those. So, what is aside from the Bruce Springsteen one? What is and the Flintstones one? What is another one that really uh, drew your attention early on? It was the Tutankhamun video. I remember
Yeah,
that.
well, yeah. I mean, the JFK one was the major one, the first major one. And you know, I devote a lot of time to that because it was the big one as I was doing them. All of the rest seemed kind of trivial and pop culture related, and but that one was just it was really different, and it was different in so many ways to me too because when you're talking about the magic bullet theory and the trajectory of the bullet from the repository building, you're looking at it at angles, and people have done it on TV when they're acting it out, and the angles don't make sense. They're both at the same level, and the angle isn't right. Whereas the change itself puts JFK higher because he's on a hydraulic seat, and more to the left, so that the angle works for the single bullet theory, because he's on the jump seats. And to me, that was the most fascinating thing. I still haven't reconciled with that because it sort of supports the single bullet theory, and I always found that strange. But because
Did
I'd
you watch
done,
the JFK movie with uh, um, well, gosh, Garrison was actually in it as the
yeah, yeah,
judge, I
yeah,
remember, but we're talking Kevin Costner back in the
yeah, I
1990s,
definitely did. I definitely did.
because
And
that
I
movie was really devoted to, kind of dissecting the magic bullet theory and
yes.
debunking the single bullet theory.
Yes, yes. And to be honest, I haven't watched it since, and that was I watched that way before I I looked into the driver shooter theory, but um, yeah, I definitely watched that, and I've watched a couple of sort of reenactments on sort of live TV. I think one of them was Geraldo Rivera at one stage, and the guy placed four seats on the same level and talked about this very thing. Um, and, but no one interjected saying, well, hang on, JFK was higher and he was closer in. And so none of it added up. There's so many data points with the JFK one that I cover. There were many accounts of him standing and waving as he was coming around the corner, and even articles saying that newsreels were showing him standing and waving, and this was impossible in the current setup with the jump seats. The back seat of Connolly just wasn't high enough for him to rest his knee. And there's a lot of things, and there's some really. I mean, I'm not sure how much time you spent reading that chapter, but some of the Warren Commission evidence is extraordinary. I think.
Yeah, I breezed through that one for whatever reason. I mean, the Bruce Springsteen one was wild,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you've got what you did is you had kind of a theoretical section of the book. We could talk
mm,
more about that in a moment, and then you went into examples of popular Mandela effects that you kind of quickly introduced, and then
mm,
you got into what you called the case studies in the
mm,
second half of the book or thereabouts. And these were long scholarly monographs on all of these Mandela effects with a shit ton of pictures of
mm,
Mandela effects, the before and after versions, and residual artifacts, text, just side by side with the way things currently are, very often old newspapers, ads, that kind of thing. It's mind blowing. You make your way
mm,
into this, and it's just so obvious that something, as Johnny likes to say, paranormal or
mm.
metaphysical is going on, because this is not a physical reality. A physical reality can't act this way.
Well, that's it, mate. There are, with all those case study chapters, there are context layers that really add. I mean, it's pretty easy to look up and find residue of misspellings and things, but when you um, put them side to side with the anomalies that are left behind, like the context decay of and the added context layers. For example, the Born in the USA, the hanky code, um, which was a common gay signaling kind of code. There are so many articles and even a scholarly PhD report comparing Bruce's hanky in the back pocket versus a Spanish performer's hanky in the back pocket, and how it was sort of unfair in their eyes to make such a distinction. So even focusing on that adds such a specific layer of context that you just cannot imagine the author has misremembered that detail. It just seems it's impossible. I find it impossible. But yeah, I mean, these are the things I tried to highlight, and side by side, it was always my intention to do a coffee table type book, because whenever I was discussing it, you just can't relay what you can see on paper and as evidence side by side, and with a bit of sort of analysis. It just had way more of an impact than just talking about it.
Oh, I agree, and it works beautifully as both a readable book, a long read type of book, and as a coffee table book, because you can just turn to any section, any example, and see and read about it, and it's purely fascinating. So I think your instinct to go in that direction was warranted for sure. Obviously, the first thing that a lot of people think of when they begin to take the Mandela effect seriously. Now, I'm not even talking about, people who want to debunk it and that kind of thing. But when people are really looking at how this might be going on, they did what I did, and I went straight to simulation theory. This was several years ago, and that was back around the time when I shared the video on Tutankhamun that got you into this.
Mm,
So I'd love to hear your perspective on simulation theory in relation to to the Mandela effect in general, and possibly the holoconscious universe model in general.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't dismiss any of that really. What I did was look at the patterns I found, and sort of I was kind of like, all right, well, you can't change a logo, every sign, every you know, um, every magazine, all that sort of stuff. You can't go around doing that, right? There has to be a marker or a sort of a coordinate that you just and you can just change one and it changes the whole thing. So I just immediately thought of code because it was a frame of reference that I knew, and I but I every time I would come up against something that I couldn't kind of figure out mentally, that and I would overcome it by creating a new sort of caveat to what I thought was a workable theory. And it just made sense that we're in this sort of projected real time kind of hologram, and real time in a sense that if everything that we're doing moment to moment is generating memory, generating stored kind of memory files, then it has to be stored somewhere. Therefore, it has to be someone has the ability to edit it. And I only jumped to that conclusion because of the evidence we have of that through the Mandela effect. So I never, it never occurred to me simulation theory being, you know, I understood it to be a copy of another, universe, and that didn't sit well with me. I just I liked the idea of a spiritual kind of code or a dreamscape, I guess, as you put it. And I've heard from others that we're in kind of in control, I guess, to an extent within the rules of where we are. Like, so almost walking into an arcade and going, I've chosen to play this game. I've got control of what I do with the joystick and the buttons, but I don't. There are parameters of the game that I can't, move from. So I'm not. I was never versed in any of those theories. I was merely. Nor do I have any kind of consciousness experience. I was merely just trying to convince myself because I was so convinced of my own memories. So I was really just looking at the physical evidence and going, this just doesn't make sense. So how does it make sense in a model that is kind of, taking a bit from here and a bit from there? And it was the first time I was ever interested in that stuff because it had context for me now. And I left school when I was 15, right? So I didn't know about atoms and neurons, all this sort of stuff. And it was the first time I ever had an interest in that because it held a greater meaning for me to figure that stuff out. So I never really was delving into that space. So it was easy for me to pick and choose something that kind of worked, if you know what I mean.
Right, right. Yeah, I think your approach there, just kind of going by the evidence and making sense of it in a very authentic, genuine way in the spirit of real research, I think it plays. I mean, that's what makes the book really, really special. I think you can compare that to where a lot of researchers and would-be debunkers of the Mandela effect are coming from. And I'm going to read this bit from your book, if you don't mind, because it
Mm,
really speaks to the problem of analysis from academics or other researchers. It's a problem, and so
mm,
so. Uh, Johnny writes that predictably, all the academic studies related to the Mandela effect have already arrived at the assumption that it can't be metaphysical or paranormal in origin. This isn't surprising because nothing paranormal has ever been proven using the scientific method, nor can it be, as there is no accepted empirical method to test or measure anything supernatural or paranormal. So we're in a real conundrum here. The lack of empirical methods to test or measure anything supernatural is neither evidence for nor against their evidence. It does, however, highlight the limitations of science to account for them. Given these limitations, science has come up with the only label it probably can for the Mandela effect: collective false memory. And some various offshoot contributors like confabulation, misleading post event information, misattribution, priming, and of course, internet influence. So their hypothesis is always going to be reverse engineered from this conclusion to find a plausible theory. They simply use the current version of what is assumed to be collectively misremembered and work backwards, assuming that it's always been this way while dismissing any claims of the metaphysical and attributing it to psychological factors or even conflating it with conspiratorial thinking. That's brilliant. That's just downright brilliant.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how I see it really. I mean, I'd often go browse the forums, the Mandela Effect forums, and, everyone kept sort of trying to draw it back to scientific methods and proof and, it was just like, well, it's two different playing fields. You can't really judge one. You can't measure something by the scientific method if it doesn't have the tools to measure it, you know? Um, so I mean, I left them pretty quickly because it was kind of frustrating and, like talking to family members about certain things, right? You just
That's
like,
right.
it's just energy draining. So, my focus was simply just to figure it out for myself and try and make sense of it all. And the process of doing it was kind of amazing for me too, right? Like, it was kind of I was developing this theory of how the world works and how potentially I may be contributing to my own reality moment to moment. Um, and so it wasn't just the intro, it started feeling, all these deeper thoughts that I'd haven't I really I mean, I've been looking into conspiracies and all that sort of stuff for a long time now, but I never really looked into the metaphysical. I always had an open mind. I knew people. My wife certainly has some kind of connection, some weird stuff going on in her life, and my cousin does as well. But I was very much, grounded in the physical, and I did what I sort of set out to do, and that was prove it to myself physically. And that was my main concern, was to try and prove it to everyone else. But as I went, I realized that it was, uh, from my perspective, I am creating my own reality. I have moment to moment, and all my little mini thought models that I've created about everything is effectively creating my own reality. And if I could get into a couple of good habits, good thought habits, and discard a few negative ones, I might be able to improve my life.
Yeah, right. So, in Get Out of Here Alive, you may recall that I wrote about the placebo versus the nocebo
Yes.
effect, and
Yeah.
that you made me think of that.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
really
that's yeah.
simple example of what might accomplish what you're talking about.
Yeah. No, well, that's spot on, and that's what I was drawing from, really. Because to a degree of something negative kind of affects you. I think is kind of the degree of how much belief you give it. And and this is why certain things, whether especially when it comes to health, health models, etc. There are family members who I'd love to sort of, you know, shake by the collar and just go, "Hey, this is not good for you." But then again, if their belief is so staunch in whatever they believe, then it's probably safer for them to continue believing that, rather than second guess it. Um, so I was, yeah, if you, do you know what
Mhm.
do you know yeah. Um, so I just sort of felt that there was this kind of space where you either had, the way you would develop knowledge was to really convince yourself of something so much that it would therefore become your kind of unfolding reality, and but you could also couldn't fool yourself. Um, so if things were important to you, you'd have to really work it out yourself. And I mean, a lot of that stuff I just draw from other people's work, like yourself. But it made sense to me while I was sort of researching all these Mandela effects, because all these patterns were confirming, that that's kind of the case.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've been paying a lot of attention to lately because I've been working on this new book, laced with this kind of this model, the whole holoconscious universe model, which is very closely related to like my model and potentiate your DNA for how you have this kind of morphic fields in
Mm,
time space, giving rise to the electromagnetic hologram that we live in. It's incredibly similar. So you have your storage
mm,
layer over in time space, and then that manifests over here as a presentation layer. All of that completely made sense to me, 100%.
mm.
But one of the basic questions that most people would have is if you can get into the storage or the memory layer and edit it, right? If that's possible to do, because obviously something or someone is doing that.
Mm.
How do we, as just normal people, go about doing that? What are the factors involved in being able to access that? And I'm endeavoring to answer that question in this new book, but I wanted to hear your theory on that.
Well, I'm glad you're doing that, mate, because I really have no idea. I think that, and I always just look at the retro causality of it, right? And I just think that, well, if a variable is changed, then anything that's dependent on that variable, um, will have an effect. So and the universe will just create the new story, the quickest, easiest sort of new story that supports that. Um, I don't, to I would love, and I can't wait to read it. I'd love to know the answer to that question, and because I'm still trying to sort of debug all the negative code that's running in my own mind to sort of fully realize the potential of creating my own reality in real time. But yeah, I sort of don't have an answer for that one.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, you've been really honest in your writing, in terms of where you're coming from, and I really appreciate that. I Because I'm still working out that equation, at least the finer points of it. I think I will plead the fifth and not spill the beans on where I'm coming from in this new book. But when it's available, people can go out there and read it. So I haven't even put it out there because I'm still finishing it. But the first step I'm
Yeah,
going to do is I'm going to be putting out a call to fellow authors who might want to review it and give me some quotes that I can use in my marketing. And then I'm going to open it up to a wider readership for free advanced reader copies. And then so people can just request those, and we'll go from there.
yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, look, I'd love to hear more about it. I mean, I'm sort of one of those people that I percolate on ideas, and they just insights come to me just when I'm walking, when I'm at the beach, when I don't think I'm very good on my feet in terms of thinking and a quick processing brain type. But I love deep thinking about certain things that um, just haven't clicked, and so I'd love to hear more about that, because you're very good, mate. I love you because you always sort of seem to be on the cutting edge of out of the box thinking, and it's really exciting to
Yeah,
every
I
day is
get so
kind of
bored
stuff.
being in the box.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, it's brilliant. I love your feed, because I never know what's going to come up.
Yeah, well, I try to keep people entertained also. I mean, one
Yeah.
has to have a sense of humor about all of this. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
some of the political stuff going on. I mean, at some point in time, as I recently wrote in my notes here on Substack, I said you just have to be willing to laugh at the profound absurdity of it all.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. So some of it, and it's really, I mean, just the way you've sort of named all these terms are really kind of new to me before. I've had, loosh and the attention you give all this sort of stuff, and it's actually really helpful because I do have a propensity to sort of deep dive in certain things that are a waste of my time and energy. Um, so it's always good to open the feed when I get a chance and hear some refreshing insights.
Well, I really appreciate that. I mean, it's nice to be able to inspire someone that really inspired me. Let's talk a minute about the you know like, who might be out there editing it? I mean, just that's another
Yeah.
related question. So we know it's being edited. We know that source layer is being edited, and it's creating what appear to be retroactive changes. But with mistakes where it misses some of the scraping function of the editor leaves certain kinds of mistakes. Certainly, things that in documents that might have different formatting side by side. So you'll see the same word like dilemma, and it will be spelled correctly on the left, and right beside it on the right, it will be spelled incorrectly. This happens over and over.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the most profound sort of finds or discoveries. Really, was there's no shortage of, excuse me, no shortage of residue finding these words, but when I kept finding them together in the same space, well, first the thing occurred to me, it was like, well, how can there be? How can we be finding two different versions? If we're in multiple universes, why am I finding two of the same kind of two different versions in the same article for a start? But that's what got me sort of really thinking about the theory, and it just became really clear that every time it was either the heading or the body was correct, the heading wasn't, or there was some kind of format break that seemed to almost trigger a failed override or something like that. Um, and and I don't know clearly I don't know what the science of this is, but it just became obvious that there was some kind of pattern, and whether it was, the I think that the filtering through, in terms of artistic renditions, the filtering through the person who did it sort of changed the frequency signature of these things to a point where they maybe weren't detectable in the override or something like that. But the question of who's doing the editing has become more prevalent after since doing the book, especially with the rainbow one, um, because
Which
they're as
got me,
old as,
that
yeah,
is a
like,
Mandela effect. In Potentiate Your DNA, I am Mandela affected when I
yeah,
describe the rainbow as a symbol of the energy field.
yes, yeah, and it was just by accident really that I sort of discovered that, and I knew it prior, but I just wasn't that interested for some reason. But it really had an architect signature to it, a fingerprint of the architect sort of doing that for some reason, and I'm kind of working on a couple more articles that are more sort of sci-fi related. So I think I'm going to call them like the Mandela effects files or something like that, because there's a lot of
I like
speculation.
that.
Yeah, but I don't speculate in the book. I stayed away from conspiracy because I didn't need to go there, even though
Absolutely.
I'm obviously aware of a lot of it. I just didn't want, I wanted my broader family and friends to not to kind of roll their eyes and go, oh, Johnny's down his conspiracy hole again. And I wanted it just to be, no, this is just a phenomenon, and so I wanted to steer clear of that. But I can't help but think of, the the data points surrounding, CERN and Sally Field and her brother who worked at CERN and all these sort of things. And, even the film Frequency almost feels like a manual for how the edits take place, the one with, Dennis Quaid and, Jim Caviezel, which interestingly, so I was watching the other day, and there's a scene in the hospital, and they've got one of those, those mobiles where they have get well cards dangling from it and stuff. And in the foreground of this shot, they've got a rainbow, a mobile with the violet on top and the red on the bottom. Um, so I thought that was fascinating as I was looking through the film, trying to garner sort of some more insights from that, because there's something there, with even with the writer Toby Emmerich, who's obviously a big time producer. He's only written three things, and one was Frequency, one was the series Frequency based off the film, and one was something called The Last Mimsy, which
Oh, yes.
focused on a mandala, and time travel and the geometrics of a mandala, and so there seems to be, some kind of, weird synchronicity going on there that I want to explore in a more fictional way. But it has occurred to me more and more that we might be in some kind of multiplayer game of and potentially, I don't rule it out. But maybe there are humans hacking the whole conscious universe and doing these strategic changes, and maybe it's a game of metaphysical chess. I mean, these are all things that I can't help letting my mind free and kind of exploring, because they're just interesting, but they're not based on anything that I can prove, but they're certainly, worthy of delving into, I think.
Oh, I think absolutely. I mean, in my article, I mentioned sort of referencing your work, that, the editors could be the universe's creators or creator, God,
Mm,
source, high level entities serving the creator or creators, cosmic interlopers and tricksters like a
yep.
Loki type of figure or the devil. And in some cases, humans, maybe alchemists or shamans, powerful and knowledgeable
Mm,
enough to access and change the info contained in the storage layer.
yeah, yeah.
So it's very
No,
fascinating, and maybe there could be potentially technology involved. But here's the thing: I'm like you. I don't have an immediate um, gut feeling that we're talking
mm,
about something technological here. I think that we're talking about a kind of dream construct, personally,
mm,
what I like to call the dreamscape. And so there is no computer to hack. There are
no,
code layers in the same way that Rupert Sheldrake would talk about morphic fields, where the
yes.
morphic resonance, where it's like a higher dimensional or
Mm,
hyperdimensional frequency domain that stores information. In the case of Sheldrake's model, it stores information about what constitutes a species. And when that information changes, according to his model, the species evolves or devolves, perhaps. So
mm,
it's really similar to the editing of the matrix that we see, the non technological matrix that we see in the Mandela effect.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that if you I mean, conceptually, if you kinda have a frequency signature that you can kind of name, and you've got coordinates of a field, whether it be in the consciousness realm or whatever. If you have that information and the right tech, if you're a human or simply the architect, you can change a variable, and that will ripple through to the present moment. Um, So, I mean, it's all there sci-fi conceptually, right? So, and who knows, what real tech they do have. There's that old trope of DARPA and co having tech, 20 years in advance of commercially available tech type thing. Um, So who knows what they can really do, but, I like to, explore that stuff anyway, and I will be exploring it when I get the time.
Oh, yeah, I really look forward to that. So
Mm,
so why would the editing, and you do answer this, but I just
mm,
wanted to hear you say it here live. Why would whoever's editing it in this way edit it in the form of Mandela effects, which are mostly pop culture references, references to products, that kind of thing. Now, there
mm.
are much larger and weirder Mandela effects that have to do with like the position of South America and stuff like that, the
It just co
direction of the Panama Canal. I mean, you get into some very large subjects, but for the
Yeah,
most part, it's seemingly meaningless little details that are being changed.
yeah. Well, and from that perspective, I can only think, and this goes back to what you say about attention, and if you were deliberately trying to get people's attention, then you would change the thing that they've been focused on. Um, and maybe they're just the little Easter eggs, laid out to get our attention, to get us kind of thinking more about, what this place is or what it's for. Which, makes sense to me. And obviously, it's not my idea, but it certainly makes sense to me that it's some kind of journey or experience to evolve and to learn, and that certainly resonates with me. Um, and maybe we're at a tipping point where technology is really, the walls are closing in on people's ability to kind of just sit with themselves and think and notice things, and maybe that's why we're seeing them, or maybe they've always existed, and now we're just at a point where all this technology and the availability of it, and to search things, we're able to sort of identify and kind of name it and corroborate with people, across the world. So I mean, there's all sorts of, and it's probably so many other different reasons as well, right? This is what excites me about it, but I certainly don't have a definitive answer. But I like to think we came here as a sort of an experience first and foremost, for some kind of growth or awareness.
I like that. I like that, and that's definitely how I'm approaching it. I'm approaching the Mandela effect as a kind of prompt of
Mm,
sorts to change our own programming in terms of how we think and process reality.
yeah, yeah,
So, I know you have the book available both as an ebook and as a hardback at the Mandela Dilemma.com, right?
yep.
And also, I just want to make sure people know how to get to you on Substack. You have the Mandela Dilemma.substack.com. So please check out both of those sites, and please take a moment to subscribe to Johnny's Substack channel. He does have more content coming. I've been prodding him to post more content, so one of these
Oh, mate,
days maybe
yeah.
that'll happen. I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love to spend more time, but you know, that's what happens when you sort of got a couple of young kids and a day job, and you sort of your focus is divided in many ways, but it's certainly something that I slowly plan out, and I'll get a few ideas here and there, but I certainly won't be pushing out a continuous, constant content. But I'll certainly be going into stuff that interests me, and more speculative stuff, as I mentioned, because I think there's some stories. Ultimately, having a film background, I'd love to do a documentary or a series, and maybe concentrate on each Mandela effect in depth, because you know, content, and, that sort of stuff people love as
Oh,
well.
I think that would
Um,
be so well received.
yeah, so I'm
We're getting a
exploring
lot
a
of
few of us.
love hearts going as you're talking, so this is
Yeah,
resonating with some
great.
people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as because I've spent a lot of time in the film industry, a lifetime ago, I do have some contacts still there, and a couple of them have have it and have expressed their appreciation for it anyway. So hopefully, somewhere down the line, I can do something. But that's my
Well, I
yeah. That was
absolutely hear you about as a father, I get that. So, your priority is what it is at the moment, and it should be there.
yeah.
One thing I
Yeah.
think I would love to see, and I think it would be really popular, is as just as a way of kind of bringing some readers in and giving them a little juicy something or other. Is you could post, let's say, a one of your Mandela effect. Examples, in the text and the images and that kind of thing as a Substack blog or as a PDF that people could download, just like a little section of it. I think that would be really cool, and it might get you, more direct interest in terms of, as an inroad into the book. And then obviously, I love your ideas for fictionalizing some things, and then the idea of doing goodness. If you could actually segue into documentary or other video format with this, I think it would be fantastic.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there are some updates that and some really good residue I've found since the book went sort of printed. So I'm going to eventually put that in context and put them up because just just for those who have read it too. But yeah, there's some really good stuff with the Volkswagen as well, and I've got some really good and these I get from different forums, and a lot of it I haven't sourced myself, but I've recently got been in contact. I don't know if you ever see Jacobin's videos, um, the Mandela Effect videos. He did some really good quality ones back in the day. He hasn't been doing them for the last couple of years, but um, I've been sort of talking to him over email, and hopefully he gets back into it and does some good stuff based on the book, maybe hopefully.
Yeah,
But
you referenced
yeah,
him at the back of the book.
yeah, he was. Yeah, he's terrific. I mean, there's some really good stuff out there, video stuff.
And you also referenced John Lamb Lash, who did a podcast series talking about the Mandela effect as evidence
Yeah,
of the fallen goddess and the
yeah.
awakening of the earth and all of that sort of thing.
That's a fascinating series, and that was one of my earliest things that I sort of just listened to as almost a podcast before I did really any much research. But yeah, he has some amazing ideas, and there's C3PO's Golden Calf channel. He's got some great production videos, and he has his own ideas about it, and they're all worth looking at because I get inspired by the content they produce. I go, oh God, I didn't know about that one. I'll go out and research that for myself. So there's plenty of people doing some good stuff out there. But I was sort of focused mainly on putting a book together that it seemed professionally put together anyway. And so it would stand up to the weight of debunking and um, which I haven't had any hardcore debunkers at me yet. So
Yeah,
um,
well, we'll get it out there. They'll try to come for
they'll
you. I
come.
mean, I'm sure
Yeah,
they will, because that's what they do. They're
yeah,
like bears in the stock market or the crypto, always looking at the
yeah,
downside of things.
yeah, yeah,
But we're bulls, right? So
yeah,
we
yeah.
go forward.
Always.
Definitely, I feel like the your choice to keep the focus very almost academically minded in a way, in terms of just presenting information, presenting some possibilities, but ultimately letting the reader decide for himself or herself. I thought that was a winning strategy. It's just a
Mm,
really, really great book, and it's got just endless things to explore. I mean, once
yeah,
I remember I spent the better part of a couple of days off and on, you know, just Googling around and doing some research on Bruce Springsteen after reading that
yeah,
section of the book. It was just
yeah,
so mind blowing to me, because I remembered that absolutely clear as day.
yeah,
That was another way I was Mandela affected, the whole bandana versus red baseball cap and the jeans
yeah.
pocket.
Yeah.
But and then you brought in the whole gender sexuality angle into that, which was even more fascinating. And it was just like, oh my god, for some
Yeah.
reason I never even made that connection, and
Nah,
it just
yeah.
blew my mind.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, mate. I've really, I mean, I appreciate you sort of getting it. A lot of people, just can't, don't seem to. I mean, you've done your own work in depth in that sort of field, so I'm not surprised. But it was great to receive your feedback and and your sort of articles and stuff. So I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure. We've got a few minutes here. Let's
Yeah.
open it up to any questions that people have, either for Johnny or myself, or for both of us, and we'll keep talking. So if there are no questions, that's fine. But we'll answer them if we can, if any show up. So have at it. Just write them in the chat if you have questions. One thing that stood out to me, I love the kind of simple elegance of the the holoconscious universe model in the way it. And well, we have a let me see. We have a question. Let me see if I can read this.
Mm.
Trey B asks, could this be like in Castaneda, and that there may be multiple realities and some overlay on top of one another, just some thoughts that I had, and so this would get to something you do write about in the book, which is the universe versus the multiverse.
Yeah. Well, I see that one is a sort of dimensional thing, and this is why the hum as presented is never a theory of everything. At its most, it could only be a part of a theory of everything and an overview of such, because I don't explain any other dimensions other than the relationship between this physical one and a speculatively consciousness one. So, what was it? Tracy, you said that.
That was Trey. Trey's a
Trey.
great guy.
So yeah, so Trey, maybe he's talking about the layer of dimensions that I think certainly encompass a whole complete model. Um, but in terms of the multiverse, I never found that interesting when I started finding all these evidence of different universes, I suppose, in the same thing, and if they were colliding, the collision was really specific, it didn't sit with me in terms of the multiverse. It still doesn't, but I think dimensionally, as he's explaining layer by layer, I think certainly that's beyond my kind of um, expertise, if I have any. But yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I can tell you, Trey, where I come from on that. You're asking if this is like Castaneda, and based on Johnny's answer, I would say yes, because in Castaneda, you kind of open up into a kind of multi-dimensionality, but it doesn't necessarily mean that when you go out into the dark sea of awareness, that you're entering another universe entirely. You're just entering part of this universe, which is much larger than we think that it is, and it has many different places that one can go and explore. Now, the way I see this is that each universe, of which there would be multiple ones, but when you're in one, you're kind of in it, and you can travel multidimensionally if you like. But until you get to the end of the line, you don't pop out into another universe. I know the law of one talks about how you go through the octave into the next experiment, and so once you get to the eighth level or something like that, you pop into a new reality. And I've talked about or written about how our 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 path here in this place is to become expert dreamers. I say dreaming gods. Right now, we're Imagineers in training, learning how to create reality, learning how to edit reality. And when we get powerful and good enough at that, then we might actually be able to create another universe through the power of our own consciousness. In which case, we might be the wizard behind the curtain editing it to start with, anyway. To let our children, as it were, know that this is possible, and that may be
Mhm.
exactly what's happening. in a fractal holographic way from some other being that did what I just described and then created this universe. I don't know if that resonates, Johnny, but that's what
Oh,
that's
mate,
that's
no, no,
what.
as in, you know, I that's why I love you, mate. You know, like you stretch my mind, and I have to go away and listen to this and sort of think about it. But I think a little part about what I got out of that was the idea that collectively we're creating our own reality in real time, um, which would suggest that the powers that be or whatever, are sort of projecting onto us what they want us to manifest, as a collective kind of society. So really, our best bet is to sort of look inward, as you say, and try and break that kind of uh, pattern that we're creating for ourselves.
Yeah, right. I write about, the only way out is in, and
Yeah.
you have to go out through the end door. That's how
Mm.
you get out of here alive, and all of this culminates in this idea that it's possible to as part of a multiplayer video game that's really just a dream, that it's possible at some point in time to kind of meet the final boss and get out of here and go to some other experiment.
Yeah. No, I think that's, like, if there are levels, if it's some kind of game setup, then, we gotta rise to the next level, and that's I think part of the purpose, I suspect, and, hopefully within this lifetime, I can learn a lot more, um, in that respect and maybe experience it too.
Yeah, right on, right on. Well, eh, join the club in terms of
Yeah,
of walking that path. It's a
yeah,
daily thing. I mean, it really involves, from my perspective, some fairly simple things that you don't do, like get stuck in conspiracy rabbit holes endlessly, and political division and useless
yeah,
arguments, and
yeah,
all of those types of things that drain our energy. And then on the other hand, you find techniques that work for you, that cultivate your power, your energy, your chi, and
yeah,
then you learn how to direct your attention into things that you want to happen. So that's sort of the creation of a very active imagination that can begin creating outcomes that you can observe as they occur. It happened to me today. It was really, I don't want to go into the whole story, but it was so bizarre. And it happened when I got kind of angry at something, but I put all this energy into wanting something all of a sudden that maybe I hadn't been putting in. And like an hour later, it shows up in my feed.
yeah, yeah,
It's just so
yeah, no,
absolutely bizarre. So I do observe this happening. I'm not saying I've mastered it. I'm working on it, but
mm.
it's fascinating for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're providing the space for exploration, and that's enough spark for a lot of us. But yeah, it's day to day. It's the small things and just I was just find it's the mindset these days. I'm concentrating on with everything. Just because our thoughts are things and all that sort of stuff. If I can be diligent about what I'm thinking about, hold my hold my temper every now and again, and then I'm moving forward.
Cool. Cool. Well, I want to just congratulate you again on your amazing book. I look forward to wherever this goes. I look forward to sharing my further thoughts on that in the future. Maybe we can have another chat down the road when there are other
Mm,
developments to
definitely.
explore where this research is going. And I also just want to remind people to visit the MandelaDilemma.com, get yourself the ebook or the amazing hardback. And please go to the MandelaEffect.substack.com and subscribe. If you'd like to support my channel and this work that I'm doing, please subscribe at saulluckman.substack.com. And yeah. Thanks, bro. I really appreciate you being here with me today.
Mate, yeah, it was great to chat, and give my love to Lee and Sarah says hi, and it's great to to be in your orbit, mate, and finally talk properly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's let this not be the last one. All right.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right.
Thanks for
Well,
everyone
enjoy
who
the rest
joined.
of your day and your summer.
Thanks, mate. You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks to everyone. Until the next time.